and welcome to the virtual Sunday service for the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lake Norman. Our fellowship walks diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united by our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and by the commitment to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Sandy McFeely, and I've been an active member of this congregation since 2013. I pre-lit the chalice to avoid awkward and embarrassing pauses. Let me read today our chalice lighting words. They are again from Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and in celebration of the life we share together. Today, Laurie Walker will be talking to us about how poetry can be the good medicine for weathering what can properly be called our collective global trauma. It's a trauma that can't be mitigated with hugs or with the warmth of human in-person connections. Words are powerful, and sometimes the right words can soothe the longings that we may not even have words to explain. Laurie Walker is a charter member of our congregation. She is also a yoga and meditation teacher, and she leads a Sunday service once each month. We are so pleased to have her with us today. At the conclusion of Laurie's sermon, Mike Alec will share a poetic song he wrote called Heart of the World. He's pretty sure you'll enjoy it.
Good morning. I think the question for all of us when we meet each other is, what is saving you lately? Poetry is saving me. It is reminding me to stay in a place of wonder. It helps me remember, hey, you can get through this. Poetry has been a comfort to me in time of loss. It reminds me that we are all connected and we need each other more than ever. And it also reflects my inner reverence for the natural world. Keating wrote, "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion and medicine, law, business, engineering. These are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life, but poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for." Here is a poem that has saved me by James Crew, who reflects on his early morning walks, and those are saving him, as many of us are finding ourselves doing a lot more walking. It's called Early Morning Walkers. When we are masked now, we have to trust our eyes to show our smile. So we have to look more deeply into each other's eyes. We are mostly a silent tribe, having slipped out of the house before first light crested the mountains. Wrapped in jackets, we will soon peel off after the first mile around the woods, where the echo of crows caw and scurry of squirrels call us back to some elemental, more private place in ourselves. Though we move to the margins of the trail as we pass, taking care not to crush the deep purple asters that have survived the frost, even a nod, a wave, or smile breaking across someone's face can save the day, reminding us we are not as far away as we feel. Pulling shirts up over our mouths or tugging on a mask, trusting our eyes will shine through the darkness of this moment. I just love that line, trusting our eyes. In this time of masks, it's the eyes that have to convey our emotions. So again, he says, pulling up our shirts over our mouths or tugging on a mask, trusting our eyes will shine through the darkness of this moment. During COVID, we have all suffered losses. Not only our losses of being able to see each other smile, although that is big in itself. I have attended 2 funerals during COVID, strangely enough, on Facebook Live. My aunt, my mother's sister, died after a long struggle with cancer. In non-pandemic times, we would have flown to Toledo, my mother and I, been surrounded by our extended family, and hugged, comforted each other, reminisced. But instead, on Facebook Live, we watched the coffin leave the church after the end of a very difficult to hear service. And we remarked to each other how our cousin George looked like he was doing okay, and how big my aunt's great-grandson had gotten. There were no gatherings, just an empty feeling as the service ended. Poetry has comforted me during times of loss. This is a poem by James Crew called A Poem of Praise for the Lost. Now that you are gone, I can't help but feel your light still burns. Somewhere here on earth like a trick candle, no wind or gust of breath can ever completely blow out. It flares up in me when I stand still, watching yellow leaves release from a maple, caressing my face as they fall away. Or when the deep thrill of a belly laugh ripples through me as it once did through you. Your flame may flicker, but will never be snuffed out by time, as long as I hold the image of your face close to my heart, and hear your voice even from so far away, reminding me to go out and live my life. The pandemic has stirred up feelings and emotions that I thought I had made peace with a long time ago. Adding in the divisive election and all that surrounds it, I've often thought about my brother, who died 10 years ago from suicide. We didn't agree on much politically, or really anything. During this turbulent election cycle, we would have certainly avoided politics, no doubt. The poem United by Rosemary Traumer reminds us all that in spite of what separates us, there are connections. It's called United. Over 30 years later, I still return to the night when my brother and I stood in the kitchen and argued the merits of grape nuts versus Captain Crunch. Potassium, 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 I still hear him shouting, chanting the one nutrient his cereal had more of than mine. Breakfast was the least of our differences, but it taught us to laugh as we disagreed, so that later when the stakes were higher, the presidential elections, the gun laws, we could argue till I cried, then snuggle on the couch, though we seldom agree, though we will forever cancel each other's votes, though I will never eat Captain Crunch, I'll sit with him as he eats it, laughing, shaking my head, grateful that he teaches me much about who I am not. He will celebrate me and buy me any damn cereal I want. Though we disagree about almost everything except how we love each other, we are two threads in a civilization that would try to make us believe we couldn't be one cloth. But we are woven tight. We are. Poems can connect us as human beings, not ideologies. So much of the division in our society is a reflection of inner divisions. The more we meet the division inside, we are better at reaching outside. The poet William Stafford wrote, "Everyone is born a poet, a person discovering the way words sound and work, caring and delighting in worlds. I just keep doing what everyone starts off doing. The real question is, why did the others stop?" Jane Hirschfield wrote, "I begin to believe the only sin is distance, all others stemming from this. When we separate ourselves, it's easier to stop caring. Let's decide to be vulnerable enough to keep knitting ourselves back into the world." This poem is by poet and environmentalist Heather Swan. Is it cruelty or mercy that often another day of horror? The tangerine mite stains the buildings, and the silhouettes of the maple trees on the craft cement block walls transform them into works of art. And do the peach and lavender clouds floating past mean to mock? Do they need to mock or remind our barbaric selves? Oh, softness, we have all but destroyed you with our bullets, our bombs, our fear. But here, the snail, my teacher, lifts its unarmored head on a leaf already wet with dew, near the iris's open throat. In these turbulent times, it's easier to close off. Poetry reminds us that the natural world continues to do its thing. And I wonder, how do I manifest that? In many of the recently published poems, so many of them have called out to smaller things. These poems hold a current of mindfulness and help us knit ourselves back into the natural world. This knitting is, as Thich Nhat Hanh describes, an awakening from the illusion of our separateness. Here's a poem called Fireflies by James Cruz. Some insides come like lightning, blinding and fierce, while others arrive as firefly flashes that brighten only an inch or so of air around them. Yet even these can gather power over time. Like the summer night, I woke and stood at the window to watch the pulsing outside, like thousands of prayers flaring up above the house, saying here and here and here, as I make my way down the stairs, using only the light of those small bodies to guide me. When I reflect on this poem, Fireflies, I hold an important image of all of us in our houses, little lights connecting together in small ways. And our lights gather and add up over time. Turning back or turning again to the natural world, trees have always been my teachers. And as we move deeper into fall, they delight us with their colors and demand our attention. This poem describes their invitation to justice. It is called Invitation by Rosemary Traumer. When my shoulders feel too slight to carry injustice, and my arms reach too short to hold the world, and my bones are too weak to carry even a single aching heart, I walk among the aspen and the spruce, and notice how the light shines through the changing leaves. Such radiance, such golden shine, and slowly the rational part of me that believes in doom is forced to fade. It's not simple, of course, as walking out into the forest, but there is something there that grows the soul and breathes a sense of possibility and tells my aching heart to rise up and do the work that must be done. Rise up and carry with it the light. Heather Swan says, there is no compass but love. And finally, Rosemary Traumer, on the last day of the world. And I read this poem because many of us have felt that this feels like our last days. In all this darkness, we still have each other. We still have poetry and the wonder that the natural world can bring. In this poem, here are a few delights. On the last day of the world, I would want to feed you raspberries. They're my favorite. Thin slices of apple, peaches so ripe they drip down our chins, down our necks. I would want to sit with you beneath a tree. No, we'll climb a tree. No, we'll plant a tree. Yes, all of these. On the last day of the world, I would want to give myself permission to feel exactly what I feel, to be exactly who I am, to shed every layer of should and meet you that way. Knowing that we have only hours left, could we put down our arguments with ourselves and each other and find energy to pick them up again? No energy, that is. On that day, I would want to write that last poem together. And let the writing undo us. Let it teach us how to get out of the way, how to obey what emerges. Let's run outside, no matter the weather, and praise the light till light is gone, and then praise the dark. W.S. Merwin wrote, on the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree. Let us all keep the faith, keep planting those metaphorical trees, and may you always have a poem in your pocket when you need one. Blessed be.
on. I think we're going to try it outside today. Looks great. It's called Heart of the World. Mountains rise at the break of day, only to greet you. Diamonds the sun, the blue mountain waters flowing behind you, just like the wind rushing around, all in a swirl like the wind. You know you are the heart of the world, chasing you down to the end of the waters. You fly across the ocean, dancing alone as the waves jump to meet you. Oh, you circle above me, just like the wind rushing around, all in a swirl like the wind. You know you are the heart of the world. Yes, you are. The rushing of ease and a brush at my door. Hey, I know you were there. How could you hide? Taking the breath from my life. Like the wind rushing around, all in a swirl like the wind rushing around, all in a swirl, just like the wind. You are the heart of the world. Take care, stay well.
Thanks to you, Laurie, for your wise and comforting words today. And thank you, Mike, for musically reflecting Laurie's message. And now, for a few announcements. The first item of really good news is that Autumn Weathers, who has a perfectly beautiful name, don't you think? And is also a new member, will also be joining our congregation staff as Director of Spiritual Education. You can read more about her and her plans to make a difference in the lives of our kids of all ages in the most recent newsletter. The next bit of news, also in the newsletter, is that Jim Price will be hosting a socially distanced picnic at his place on Saturday, October 24. Starting at noon. There's a pond, he calls it Walden too, of course, for fisher persons, some very entertaining goats who live in a goat mansion that Jim built, walking paths, and live people to talk with. No Zoom involved. More details about the picnic are in the current newsletter. The final news item is a heads up for an all-fellowship town hall meeting next Sunday, October 25 at 11 a.m. There are more details about it in the current newsletter, and they will likely be repeated next week, along with a Zoom link to join. If you are a visitor to today's service, welcome. I'm so glad you chose to give our virtual service a try. If you like what you've seen and heard so far, and you're wondering how to stay connected with our congregation, please reach out to our membership chair, Linda Heidenberg. Her email address is at the bottom of the screen. There's no practical way to pass a basket in a virtual service, but we really appreciate members for keeping current on their pledges. And we are especially grateful for the various gifts sent in by visitors and friends. We want to be ready to operate at full speed when something closer to normal life resumes. Look for the mailing address for your gifts on this screen or in our newsletter. Now, I've mentioned the newsletter several times already this morning. If you aren't getting it in your inbox every Thursday, well, occasionally Fridays, please let Linda Heidenberg at our membership address know about that. She will fix it. We encourage members and friends to continue staying in touch with each other by phone, text, email, or whatever social media you use. These are terrible and anxiety-filled times, and hearing a familiar voice really does help. There are deep bonds within our community, and now, right now, is the time to make that extra effort to sustain those bonds. Finally, at 11 o'clock this morning, after you've refilled your coffee, we hope you will join us via Zoom to chat about today's service and anything else that's on your mind. We use the same Zoom link every week for the chat, so look in most any recent newsletter for it. Thank you for spending this hour with us, and I leave you today with the hopeful words of the courageous Paul Robeson. Sorrow will one day turn to joy. All that breaks the heart and oppresses the soul will one day give place to peace and understanding, and everyone will be free. Go in peace.